Good morning, everybody. It is so good to be with you again. I didn't expect to be here so soon, but I am grateful to be here. I find it really fascinating that the last few speakers have mentioned the moon shadow. And I know generationally, like, you probably all in here thought that I didn't know that song. And I looked around and all of you were singing it. And I kind of knew it. I just want you to know, I've heard it before. But it's really fascinating that Reverend Abigail asked me to be here. I believe that every single one of you that are here today are here for a purpose. I don't think that anything happens by accident. I think that everyone that came into this room today is here to receive something. And I say that because I know that I'm absolutely here by a divine purpose. Reverend Abigail and I had a conversation earlier this week about me participating in the Next Gen Retreat, which is a young adult gathering of 20 to 30 somethings, all in spiritual community. And I said to her, you know, I'm really just not feeling called to be there. And I couldn't give her a fabulous reason why. I just, you know, sometimes we need space, we need time. I'm traveling the next 3 weeks of this month. And then she calls me literally Thursday or Friday and says, I've had a cancellation. Can you fill in for me? I said, what's your topic? She says, shadow. And if you've been following me, or you know the last, 2 or 3 months of my my ministerial path, I have been doing and giving a speaking tour all about the sacred amidst the shadow. So I said, absolutely, I will do it. So the topic today is about the dark night of the soul. And next month, I will be here again addressing the shadow, the dark and the light, and integrating the integration of both and what that means for our lives and how do we navigate in the shadow. I will be going into that extensively in a much deeper way. I will be giving a workshop, so hopefully all of you can come that afternoon, that I've been doing all over the nation. And what I'm noticing, especially within our organization, is that shadow work is needed, especially with what's going on in the world. You look at race consciousness and what we see on TV and in the media and how it affects us so much. Even in this organization, sometimes we say, everything's perfect, everything's good. And we believe that, and at the same time, there are things underneath that we must look at. Dr. Ken Gordon, who's our spiritual leader, he said, we cannot heal what we don't acknowledge. So as a collective spiritual community, locally and internationally, we really owe it to ourselves to do that work. And so today is just the introduction, I'm just going to say, to next month, when I'll be here at the end of the month. So back in June, I had the opportunity to tour Southern California. I was on a speaking tour of over 7 to 8 different spiritual communities. And of course, it was because of the magazine that had just come out, The Sacred Amidst the Shadow. So I was using that as a way in which to get myself out there to really address these things. And I've been writing an inmate in the Donovan Correctional Facility for the last year. And he's been in prison for about 20 years. And because I was down in San Diego, I made the decision very consciously that I wanted to visit him. And I've never been to a prison before, and I made the decision because I was speaking about the shadow. And as we understand, we teach what we most need to learn, right? Usually what's up in my life is usually what comes from the pulpit and the platform. But I realized that if I'm going to teach this, and I'm going to tell people about the shadow and looking at their own shadow, then I've got to see it firsthand. And I've got to get right in the midst of it, because as you see, our prison industry, in my view, is just a modern form of slavery. Not giving people the tools and the resources and the ways in which to live and thrive. And so I got all courageous and I made an appointment to go see him, and he had not seen anyone in 20 years. He never had a visitor. So I knew my hands were pretty full, but I could have never known the depth of that experience and what it was going to serve me, how it was going to serve me. There were so many loopholes. If you've ever been to a correctional facility like that, there's so many rules and restrictions and ways in which you have to jump through hoops to get in. And it's about a 2-hour drive near Tijuana. And so I got myself there, and I was really nervous about the dress code and what am I to expect, and I don't know this person, and you see all this scary stuff on TV, and I thought, okay, Savanna, you're supposed to do this. Like, God would not have brought you this far for you to just fall and fail. So I got myself to the facility. I went through all of the rules and the security checkpoints and everything, and there's so many different points. And I get up to the front, and the attendant says to me, you have an appointment, but he's actually working today. I don't think he can see you. And I'm like, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? And so I looked at the guy and said, please, like, he has never had a visitor, ever. Can you please just this one time? And so they called a bunch of people, and we went through, again, more loopholes. And I'm standing there just thinking, this is going to work out, it's going to happen. And eventually they gave us the go-ahead. So I waited for a really long time to get to the next checkpoint, and it was hot as ever, if you can imagine San Diego in the summer, in far south. And so I get into the room, and I don't know the protocol. I don't know how it goes. I don't know where to sit, what to do, how to say, what to say. I don't know any of it. But I committed to myself that I was going to see the God and the light within this man and within every single person in this room. That if I can see God here, I can see God everywhere. So I got into the room, and I waited for him for a good 20 minutes, and it took everything in me to not lose it. Because it's so intense, there's this intensity, and then once you get in the room, you look around, and you see these inmates with their families, with their little ones, with their loved ones, and I kid you not, there's definitely judgment, but something happened within me where I looked around, and all I could feel in that room was love. And I looked at these young, beautiful black men in this room who so often get sent to prison for reasons that we know, the time doesn't fit the crime. And they're so beautiful. And I thought to myself, why? Why? It doesn't have to be this way. Like, it doesn't have to be this way. This is what we teach. We teach connection and oneness and unity and that God and life exists in all people. It was the darkness. It was like, God, these are the disowned. So my dear inmate friend comes out to greet me, and he couldn't look me in the eye. And you could tell it was one of the best days of his life. It was one of the best meals of his life. And I sat with him for 3 hours, the full scope of time that you were allowed there. And as uncomfortable as I was, it was the most enriching experience for me, because I was able to see beyond appearances. I was able to see beyond what he had done and what everyone else in that room had done. And I'm sure I probably would not have wanted to know. But I'm telling you, there was this feeling in the room of hope, of light. And he said to me later, when I left the prison, it took all this strength to hold it together, and then the minute I got out of that checkpoint, I just lost it, sobbing the whole way home. Like, there's got to be more than this. And he called me numerous times after this now and said, Savanna, you gave me hope to want to get out. I had forgotten what it was like to feel connected to someone, to feel this relational thing happening. I had forgotten what that felt like, and you just sparked something within me that made me go, oh my gosh, I have a life that I can live, and I'm going to get out. And so we are in touch more regularly now. But I tell that story because that experience really gave me some perspective when we're talking about dark times, challenging times, the shadow that exists within all of us. We understand that darkness is just the absence of light. Sometimes it's this idea or feeling that we are separate from Source. I went to Iyanla Van Zandt. How many of you know her? She's an incredible author, writer. She's on the Oprah Winfrey own network with her own show. I saw her many years ago, and I happened to see her last night. She did an event with our Heart and Soul Center of Light. And you know how sometimes you go to hear a speaker, and all of a sudden they take you to this depth within your being, and you can't quite comprehend what's going on until afterwards you get home, and then all of a sudden what was said just hits you right in the face. That was me last night. I had this whole talk prepared. And then I got there. And her message was so powerful that it had me just stop and just stunned in my tracks. And something she said to me that I want to say to all of you is that even amidst the dark night of the soul, even amidst our daily going-ons of life, you matter. My presence matters, and your presence matters. So many of us were taught from a crazy past or lifestyle, or maybe we came from a dysfunctional family, that we don't matter, that we aren't enough. And something she said last night was just so poignant. She said, you matter, and you matter because you are enough. But yet sometimes we forget that in the midst of difficult and challenging moments, don't we? Sometimes life throws us curveballs and transformation and growth wants to happen, and yet we find ourselves stuck or stagnant. Or maybe it's time for a change, and we are so resistant to change, aren't we? So for the last 3 or 4 years, I've been kind of a gypsy. I've been all over the world, and I've been all over the place. And in those moments, sometimes they're really scary because I'm always facing the precipice of the unknown of something that wants to happen, and I don't know what that is. But I'm having to trust that there's something greater than me that knows. And so what if you could trust that the entire picture was unfolding perfectly for you in every moment of your life? Many people don't know that I grew up in West Texas in a town of 3,000 people. And I moved to Colorado when I was 16, and that's the life I don't normally talk about. But what I look at in my life of growing up in the oil fields is that most people were expected to stay there forever. That's just what you did. You just work in the oil fields, and you live your life, and you go through life happily in that way. But I always knew that there was something bigger for me. And so, if you look back on your life, have you ever seen or have you ever noticed that every single thing you did up until this point made sense? It like made you the person you are now? I could have never planned it. We all want to know what's going to happen next, right? We're not comfortable being in the unknown. We're not comfortable not knowing. We're not comfortable being in the dark. And yet, if I had known what my life was going to be like, it would have scared the daylights out of me. I would have never done it. I would have never taken the leap. So the dark night of the soul, what is that? Some of us have probably experienced it. Some of us have heard the term. It came from the 16th century Spanish poet and mystic John of the Cross. He came out of the Christian religious order of the Carmelites along with Saint Teresa de Avila. And they tried to reform this order, but many in the order were against it. And so they imprisoned John of the Cross for 8 months. And when he was in prison, he wrote these famous poems. One of them you may know, La Noche Oscura del Alma, which is the dark night, or the obscure night. The dark night is a period of transformation. It's a time in which the darkness forces us, sometimes by a spiritual 2x4, I like to say, it forces us to our knees. It forces us to grow in ways that we could not have ever known. In my life, it's been a breaking of a paradigm, of an old idea, of an old way of being, of a Savanna that no longer exists or can be the same. The dark night of the soul is not knowing. Because if we were aware of what was going on, then it would disrupt and it would sabotage what really wants to be known within you. So the main purpose of a dark night of the soul is not to attain anything. It's to be present in the awareness of what is. It's an awareness that grows within you. It's sometimes the spiritual path is referred to as the path of the descent. Intense suffering that we must overcome. I think suffering is a choice. But no doubt that dark place allows us to go deeper into a faith or into the light of a knowingness that we couldn't have known with all the distractions otherwise. So how do we embrace that? How do we embrace the unknown? How do we embrace the shadow? Well, it's about accepting what is. We all want comfort in the unknown, and one of my affirmations is, everything is for me, nothing is against me. Can you say that with me? Everything is for me, nothing is against me. You know, sometimes if you look at the Bible, the unknown, the promised land rather, you look at it and you read about it and there's nothing there. It's like this, and metaphysically we would talk about it as the unknown possibilities. So when we say you want to reach the promised land, it's that unknown possibilities of what hasn't yet come into fruition or form. The other way that we embrace this darkness, this unknown, is that we trust that there's something greater than us. You know, the miner, when he's in that mine, can't always see what's in front of him. He has to rely on the light of his headlamp right there. He can't see any further than that light. So it's about us trusting the creativity of the darkness, the holy unknown moments, for they bear rich fruit when we have released our attachment to the way that we think that things must be. Reverend Michael Beckwith, who I love from the Agape International Center in Los Angeles, says, "The unknown has been thwarted by your togetherness. The worst day in the life for your ego is the best day in the life for your soul." The worst day in the life of your ego is the best day in the life for your soul. Why? Because it's requiring something within you to be cultivated to move beyond it. To trust that there is something greater within you that knows the answer, the solution, the way through, and everything that you cannot know with a rational mind. So how would your life be different if you trusted more? I mean, really trusted more. The third thing that allows us to embrace the shadow and the unknown is remembering our source. Ernest Holmes says that the only thing that we really need to heal is the notion that we are separate. And that's what Iyanla was talking about last night, is that the reason we go into this spiral of depression and disconnectedness is not only because we're separate from source or think we are, but because we have believed in the notion that we are not enough and that we don't matter. That our presence doesn't matter, which is completely crazy. It's a completely fabricated lie. And the shadow serves us in that it allows us to uncover the hidden or disowned aspects of ourselves that maybe we didn't see growing up, maybe we didn't want people to know about us. And it allows us to bring truth and light to those places. A Course in Miracles says, "A sense of separation from God is the only lack you really need correct." So what is your spiritual practice that brings you back to the presence? That brings you back to cultivating a relationship with the divine of your own understanding? And lastly, the thing that I know from my own life helps us in navigating through the unknown and the dark nights is gratitude. If we can just be grateful for the breath, for the bed we're sleeping in, for the home we live in, for this beautiful place we live in, that gratitude starts to create this energy within us and within life that allows our desires and intentions to be made manifest much quicker. It's like this impulse. You notice that where you put your attention is where your life will be. And so if you are in lack and negativity, what do you get more of? Lack and negativity. And so gratitude, what can we be grateful for? How many of you are familiar with the beautiful spirit Immaculée Ilibagiza? Her name is very hard to say, but she's an incredible woman, author. She wrote the book Left to Tell. And she lived through the Rwandan genocide. You might know her through Wayne Dyer, because Wayne Dyer actually found her on his PBS special. He introduced her. She wrote a book called Left to Tell, and she survived hidden for 91 days with 7 other women in a small bathroom, no larger than 3 feet by 4 feet, with an area of 12 feet. 7 women, 91 days. The bathroom was concealed in a room behind a wardrobe in the home of a Hutu pastor. Her mother, her father, and her 2 brothers died. They were killed, and one brother lived as he was studying in Senegal at the time. And in this book, she shares how her Roman Catholic faith guided her through this terrible ordeal, but how eventually her forgiveness and compassion towards her killers, who killed her entire family, is what saved her. Read her book. It provides more context to how do we really move through dark times. We see it in the refugees coming over from Syria right now. The stories that are heart-wrenching and heartbreaking of what is it that keeps us present and in the midst of light when darkness arrives on our doorstep. She was able to do this through compassion and forgiveness of these killers. So can I make peace with the unknown, is the question. Can I give gratitude every day for everything that I have? Can I remember, Source, that I am always connected to this one life, this one presence? Can I accept what is in this moment and trust that something greater than me knows the answer, even when I don't? Sometimes we just get to surrender into the unknown, because that's where the creativity happens. That's where the unknown possibilities come forth for our lives. So in closing, I read this quote by my favorite Rumi. The wound is the place where light enters you. Be patient where you sit in the dark, because the dawn is coming. So let us just go into prayer now. Allowing yourself to sit comfortably in your chair, taking a deep breath. Giving thanks for the power and the presence of this life, of this moment. Knowing that there is only one thing happening, and that is the activity of life, of Spirit of God. This divine intelligence that is everywhere present, that is the life of all beings, all people, everywhere. This power and this presence is my life, and it is the life of every person in this room, seeking to express itself as joy, as love, as harmony, as compassion, as surrender, as healing and transformation. I speak a word this day for every person in this room, knowing that there is a divine blessing upon your life, knowing that whatever you are going through in life, no matter what is going on in the outside world, in the world of effect, that there is the ability and the capacity for more love and more joy to exist. That there is healing, that there is transformation, that there is wholeness, that there is perfection in every area of your life. That there is enough good to go around, that all needs are met here and now in this moment. That everything is working for good, for my life and the life of all people everywhere. Releasing the fears and the doubts and the worries and the scarcity and the negativity and all the thinking that would remove me from this affirmation of love itself. I know that the presence of life is right here and now. That there is nothing too big for God. That there is nothing too big for life. For this power and this presence lives within all of us. And so bring forth an individual in your life that might need a bit more love and healing this day. Bring them into your heart. We bless them. We hold them in nurturing and safety and support. And we know that their highest good of something greater than they are is happening in their life here and now, in their finances, in their relationships, in their careers, in their health. I know there is a perfection and a wholeness happening for each one of us. So giving thanks for this prayer and for the gratitude of life itself, that is so magical and so beautiful. I release my word into the activation of the law, and I know it is done. It is done, here and now. And all together we say, and so it is.